Welcome to FlowUps, your guide to mastering movement, management, and the strategies that keep operations flowing. In Episode 2, we dive into communication, verbal, nonverbal, and everything in between. Stay tuned as we explore what it takes to sync your message and lead with clarity.
Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive. You've shared a stack of really fascinating insights with us, all pointing to something super critical in, well, pretty much everything we do, communication. So today we're doing a deep dive into the art, and maybe the science too, of connecting effectively. We'll pull out the key stuff to help you become a truly impactful communicator.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how often we just assume communication works. Like it just happens effectively on its own. But in reality, it's a skill, a strategic one. It really demands deliberate thought and, practice.
Definitely.
Just think about projects for a second. So many fail, not because of like technical stuff, but because the communication plan was weak or didn't exist.
Right.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, mastering communication isn't just about speaking clearly. It's really about hitting your goals.
Yeah, achieving things.
Whether that's persuading someone over coffee or launching a massive project. So this deep dive, it's kind of a shortcut to understanding the basics and some more advanced strategies too.
Absolutely. So where do we even start with something so foundational? One core idea that really jumped out is shifting focus. Moving away from like self-focus to being really audience-centric.
Yeah, it sounds simple, right?
Yeah, almost too simple.
But think about it. How many times do we start with, okay, what do I want to say? Instead of asking, what does my audience actually need to hear to get this? To feel it, to, do something about it. That shift, focusing on them instead of you, that's probably the biggest lever you have.
It really is.
It means you got to do some homework first. Some reconnaissance, maybe?
Right. Reconnaissance, reflection, research, understanding their knowledge level, their attitudes.
Yeah, where are they coming from? Are they resistant? What do they expect?
And crucially, what motivates them? What makes them tick?
Exactly. When you put in that effort, your message just lands differently.
It resonates, people remember it, and hopefully they act on it.
Which leads right into the next point, doesn't it? That communication needs to be goal-driven. Incredibly goal-driven. Every single message should have a clear purpose. We can actually break down a communication goal into 3 parts to make it simpler.
Okay.
First, information. What do you want them to know? What facts or ideas need to get across?
Got it.
Second, emotion. How do you want them to feel? Inspired, concerned, reassured.
Well, right.
And third, action. What specific thing do you want them to do after they hear you?
No. Feel, do. Okay.
Having that clarity helps you laser focus your message on what they need. And it also gives you a yardstick, right? To judge if your communication actually worked later on.
That makes sense.
And, this raises an important question for all of us. Are we just talking, just filling the air? Or are we actually trying to achieve something specific with our words?
Exactly. Because if you are trying to achieve something, you can't just ramble.
Oh, definitely not. Nobody wants that.
We've all been there listening to someone just go on and on.
Right. It's painful.
That's where structure comes in. It's so vital. Our brains, apparently, are actually wired for structure.
They really are. It helps us make sense of things.
So a framework that came up, one that I really like, is asking what, so what, now what?
Oh, that's a great one. Super practical.
Yeah. How would you use that, say, pitching something new?
Okay, let's take a new software feature. The what is the feature itself. This new thing analyzes user feedback instantly. Simple.
Okay.
The so what is the value for them. So your team saves 10 hours a week sorting data. They can do more creative stuff. That's the relevance.
Right, the benefits, so what?
And the now what is the clear next step, the call to action. So let's pilot it next sprint. Let's see those savings.
What, so what, now what? Nice.
It helps the audience process it smoothly. And honestly, it helps you think more concisely too. Forces clarity.
And thinking about clarity, in today's world, we're just bombarded, right? Information overload.
Constantly, yeah.
So grabbing and holding someone's attention, that's like gold dust.
Yeah.
Engagement, basically.
Engagement, sustained attention. It's precious.
So what are some effective ways to actually do that, to keep people engaged?
Well, we can kind of boil it down to 3 main techniques. First, there's physical engagement, getting the audience to actually do something.
Like what?
Could be simple, like answering a poll, typing in a chat box, maybe collaborating on a virtual whiteboard. something active.
Okay, physical. Got it.
Second is cognitive engagement. This is about getting people thinking, answering questions in their own minds, maybe considering an analogy you've offered.
Making them think. Okay.
And third, linguistic engagement. This is using language to draw them in directly, using you, using people's names if appropriate, or phrases like, picture this, or imagine if, or think back to when.
Pulling them into the narrative.
Exactly. It makes the communication more vivid, helps them visualize, and really aids memory, makes the message stick.
Okay, so those are great techniques. But here's the thing. Even if you do all that, you're audience-centric, you have a goal, it's structured, it's engaging,
Yeah.
you can still kind of fall flat.
If something's missing.
Yeah, if your presence isn't there. That feeling of authenticity, confidence, whether you're talking live or just writing an email, it's critical.
Absolutely critical. Presence ties it all together.
How do you develop that? It feels a bit intangible.
It can feel that way, but there are practical things. Like if you're presenting, actually record yourself. Watch it back. It can be painful, but
Well, I bet. Cringy, maybe?
sometimes. But incredibly useful. If you're writing, proofread like crazy. Get another pair of eyes on it.
Yeah.
And in both cases, actively seek feedback. Ask people you trust. The key is consistent effort, repetition, reflection, feedback.
It reminds me of that story about Matt Abrahams at Stanford.
Oh, yeah.
He thought he was going to be a doctor, apparently. Then he hit calculus and chemistry.
Uh-oh. Been there.
Right. And realized, wait, my passion is actually communication. It just shows these aren't like fixed talents. They're skills. You can build them.
Totally. You can absolutely cultivate communication skills. It takes work, but it's doable. And building on that, let's maybe widen the lens a bit. Think about communication overall, the basic definition, right? The imparting or interchange of thoughts, opinions, or information by speech, writing, or signs.
Okay.
But its impact is huge. Affects your stress, your relationships, your productivity, hitting your goals, everything.
Yeah, it touches everything.
And we mainly do it in three big ways. There's spoken communication, which has two parts. Verbal, that's just the words you say.
Right.
And paraverbal, that's how you say the word.
Oh, the how. Yeah.
Then there's nonverbal communication, gestures, body language, all that stuff. And finally, written communication, email, reports, you name it.
That how you say it part, the paraverbal, that seems incredibly powerful.
It really is.
We all know that saying, right? It's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Classic and true.
Think about this sentence. I didn't say you were wrong. Emphasize you.
Implies someone else said it. Or you said they were wrong.
Right. Emphasize didn't. I didn't say you were wrong.
Means maybe you thought it or wrote it, but didn't say it.
Yeah. And emphasize wrong. I didn't say you were wrong.
Implies you said they were something else. Confused, maybe?
It's wild. Just changing the stress changes the whole meaning.
Completely.
So how do we break down this paraverbal stuff? What are the components?
Okay, three main things here. Pitch, tone, and speed.
Pitch, tone, speed. Okay.
Pitch is the key of your voice, high or low. High pitch can sometimes sound, anxious or excited. A lower pitch often comes across as more authoritative, more grounded. But the key is variation. Monotone puts people to sleep.
Right. Avoid the monotone.
Then there's tone. That's kind of the mix of pitches that creates the overall mood or feeling.
The vibe.
Yeah, the vibe. For a positive tone, you might try slightly lowering your pitch, smiling. You can actually hear a smile sometimes sitting up straight. And even watching your inner monologue. Negative thoughts can leak into your tone.
Interesting. Check your internal chatter.
Okay.
And speed.
Speed, yeah. The pace. Talk too fast, people can't keep up. Too slow.
You lose them. They tune out.
Exactly. A moderate pace usually feels most natural and helps people focus. Speed also really impacts the tone and the emotional quality.
It makes sense. You sound rushed and anxious if you talk too fast.
Right. Or maybe bored if you're too slow and deliberate.
So recording yourself again.
Yeah.
That would help check pitch, tone, and speed too.
Absolutely. It's a great tool for self-awareness on all these paraverbal aspects. And then working hand in hand with paraverbal is, of course, nonverbal communication.
Body language.
Body language. Your body is sending messages constantly right alongside your words. You might have heard about the Mirabian study from back in '71.
Vaguely.
Yeah.
Something about percentages.
Yeah, that's the one. The basic takeaway people often quote is that 55% of our message comes from body language.
Wow, 55%, that's huge.
It is. Now, it's not universally true in every single situation. You wouldn't understand 93% of a foreign language just by watching someone.
Right, okay. Context matters.
Context definitely matters, but it really underscores how vital body language is in our interactions.
So what kind of things are we talking about? What falls under nonverbal?
Well, different categories. There's your posture. Are you hunched over? Might signal stress or lack of confidence. Leaning back, maybe relaxed, maybe too casual. Ramrod straight, could be anxiety.
Posture, okay.
And the position of your arms, legs, feet, hands. Crossed arms or legs are often seen as closed off or defensive. Fidgeting can signal boredom or nerves.
Fidgeting, yeah.
And of course, facial expressions. Smiles, frowns, a raised eyebrow, chewing your lip. These are very expressive.
They really are. You can read a lot on someone's face.
Definitely. And specific gestures have common interpretations, at least in, say, North America. Nodding usually means yes.
Thumbs up for good or agreement.
Right. Crossed arms for defensive or disagreeing. These cues add another layer to the message.
Okay, so we have verbal, paraverbal, nonverbal. It seems straightforward enough, but communication still breaks down all the time. Why is it so complex? What are the barriers?
It is complex, and yeah, barriers pop up constantly. People often feel things like, oh, I just can't explain this well, or I don't have time for a proper conversation, or we just come from totally different backgrounds.
Yeah, I've felt those.
Those feelings usually fall into three main buckets. First, language barriers.
Different languages, obviously.
Obvious one, yeah. But also non-native speakers grappling with fluency, or even just different dialects or subtle word meanings within the same language.
Okay. How do you deal with those?
Well, identifying it is step one. Then maybe using visuals, pictures, diagrams, or a translator if needed. Simplification helps too.
Makes sense. What's the second type?
Second, cultural barriers. Words or gestures meaning different things in different cultures, or even differences in social class or lifestyle that create misunderstandings.
That seems tricky.
It can be. Best bet, if you know you'll be interacting across cultures, do a little research beforehand. And always, always ask curious, open, non-judgmental questions if you're unsure.
Curiosity over judgment. Good rule. Okay, third type.
Third is differences in time and place. Location barriers, basically.
Like time zones.
Time zones, yeah. Physical distance making real-time conversation hard, or even just being rushed, trying to communicate complex things quickly between meetings.
Right, the just grabbing you for a sec problem?
Exactly. Solutions there often involve finding mutually convenient times, using email or asynchronous tools for things that aren't urgent, and always confirming understanding, maybe asking them to play it back.
Playback, yeah, that's a good one. Okay, so barriers exist. What about tools to structure messages better, especially on the fly?
Ah, yes. For structuring verbal messages, especially when you're put on the spot, the STAR acronym is fantastic.
STAR, like the star in the sky.
Exactly. STAR. It stands for situation, task, action, result.
Okay.
It helps make sure your message is clear, complete, correct, concise, all the C's.
Situation, task, action, result. Walk me through it.
Okay. S is situation. What was the context? Who, where, when? Like on Tuesday, I was in the director's meeting at the main plant. Sets the scene.
Got it. Situation.
T is task. What were you supposed to do? What was the goal or objective? I was asked to present last year's sales figures to the group.
Okay. Task. Makes sense.
A is action. What did you actually do? How did you approach the task?
So I pulled out my laptop, fired up PowerPoint, and presented the slideshow.
Action. Okay.
And R is result. What happened? What was the outcome? Everyone was impressed by the prep work and even more by our great sales figures.
Result. Wow, that's
Yeah.
really neat. Situation, task, action, result.
It's super adaptable, works for a quick hallway chat, works for prepping for an interview question, works for structuring longer presentation section. Very versatile.
I like that. STAR. Okay, so that helps with sending messages clearly. But what about the other side? Receiving them, we have to talk about listening.
Crucial. Absolutely crucial. And listening is not the same as just hearing.
Right. Hearing is passive, biological.
Exactly. Listening is active. It's interpreting the whole message, the words, the tone, the body language, everything we've been talking about. So how do we get better at it? Like right now, today, any practical tips?
Definitely. Here are a few quick wins. First, actually listen. Put distractions away. Phone down, close unnecessary tabs.
Minimize distractions.
Okay. Second, try really hard not to interrupt. If a brilliant thought pops into your head, just park it mentally. Let them finish.
Hold that thought. Tough one sometimes.
It is. Third, aim for like a 90-10 split. 90% listening, 10% talking.
90-10. Wow.
Fourth, when you do talk, make sure it's actually relevant to what they just said. Stay on topic.
Don't hijack the conversation.
Exactly. Fifth, resist offering unsolicited advice. Sometimes people just want to be heard, not fixed.
Good one. Just listen.
Sixth, try to ensure the environment is okay for listening. Reduce noise if you can.
Right. Set the stage.
And finally, if you're taking notes, find a way to do it that doesn't break the connection or the flow. Maybe summarize notes later.
Those are great practical tips. But it sounds like it takes real mental effort, active listening.
It does. It's a skill that requires focus.
How do you really get into that zone and show the other person you are listening?
Right. Sending the right signals is part of it. Active listening basically has 3 steps. First, try to identify their frame of reference. Where are they coming from?
Put yourself in their shoes.
Kind of, yeah. Like seeing a bear at the zoo feels very different from seeing one inside your tent, right?
Yeah.
Same bear, different frame of reference.
Okay, good point.
Second, just listen closely, attentively, tune in, and third, respond appropriately. This is where those signals come in. It could be nonverbal, nodding, leaning in slightly, maintaining eye contact.
Showing you're engaged.
Exactly. It could be quasi-verbal little sounds like, okay.
Right. Channeling.
Right. Or it could be verbal, asking clarifying questions or paraphrasing what you heard back to them in your own words.
Like, so it sounds like you're feeling.
Perfect example. It sounds like. Or, so, if I understand correctly you're saying, it shows you're trying to understand and gives them a chance to correct you if you misunderstood. These cues, used genuinely, really make the other person feel heard.
That makes a huge difference. And you mentioned asking questions. Here's where it gets really interesting. How just changing the way we ask questions can totally change a conversation.
Oh, absolutely. Asking good questions is a superpower.
It's not just about asking any question, right? There are different types.
Exactly. We can broadly distinguish between open and closed questions first.
Okay. Open versus closed.
Open questions usually start with who, what, where, when, why, how. They encourage longer, more detailed answers. Great for exploring ideas, fact-finding, getting a conversation rolling.
Like, what did you think about that presentation?
Perfect. Or, how did you approach solving that problem? You get more than a one-word answer.
Right. And closed questions.
Closed questions usually limit the answer, often to just yes, no, or a very specific piece of information.
Like, did you finish the report? Or, what time is the meeting?
Exactly. Useful for confirming facts, getting specific data points, or sometimes gently guiding a conversation towards a conclusion.
Okay. Open for exploring, closed for confirming.
Huh?
What about digging deeper? Sometimes people say things that are vague.
Ah, yes. That's where probing questions come in. These are specific types of questions designed to get more detail or clarity.
Probing questions. Okay, like what?
Well, there are different kinds of probes. If you need clarification on something fuzzy, you might ask, could you tell me a bit more about what you mean by streamlining the process?
Asking for specifics.
Right? Or if you suspect there's more to the story, you might probe for completeness or correctness. What happened after that? Or was anyone else involved?
To give the full picture.
Right. You can also probe to determine relevance if someone seems off topic. How does that connect back to the main project goal?
Gently bringing them back.
Yeah. Or probe to drill down on vague statements. You mentioned some concerns. What specific concerns did you have?
Pinpointing the issue.
And finally, you can use a probe to summarize and check understanding. So just to make sure I've got it, the key steps are X, Y, and Z. Is that right?
Wow, questions really are tools, aren't they? Different tools for different jobs.
Absolutely. Mastering questioning techniques can fundamentally change the quality of your interactions.
Okay, we've laid a really strong foundation here. Core principles, delivery, barriers, listening, questioning. But what happens when the usual approach isn't working? Like when you're stuck focusing on problems.
Yeah, sometimes the standard problem-solving mode just keeps you spinning your wheels, focusing on deficits.
Right. Our sources mentioned something really different. Appreciative inquiry.
Appreciative inquiry, or AI. Yes, it's a really refreshing alternative.
How does it work? What's the core idea?
Well, traditional problem-solving often asks, what's wrong here, and how do we fix it? AI flips that script entirely. It asks, what's working well right now, and how can we build on that? How can we amplify the good stuff?
Focusing on strengths instead of weaknesses?
Exactly. The name says it all. Appreciate, meaning to value highly, to recognize the best in people or the world around us. And inquiry, meaning to seek information, to explore by asking questions.
So, seeking information about what we value and what's already working.
Precisely. And it usually follows a kind of cycle, often called the 4D cycle.
4D, okay.
First is discover. You actively look for and appreciate the best of what is. What processes are working well? When were we at our best? What are our core strengths?
Discover the positive core.
Okay. Second is dream. Based on that positive core, what could be? What does the ideal future look like? If we built on our strengths, what's possible?
Dream, envisioning the ideal.
Third is design. How do we get there? What concrete systems, structures, or strategies would support that dream? Co-creating the future.
Design, making it concrete.
And fourth is destiny, or sometimes deploy. Let's make it happen. Let's implement the design, innovate, adjust, and sustain the positive change. It's about action.
Discover, dream, design, destiny. That's a really positive way to approach change.
It can be incredibly powerful. It shifts the energy from complaining about problems to building on successes. It's been used everywhere, from huge companies like John Deere saving millions through process improvements,
Right.
to community initiatives like helping kids orphaned by AIDS in Zimbabwe find support. It fosters collaboration and hope.
That's a fantastic reframing. Okay, switching gears slightly. What about just talking to people? Social situations, networking events? Sometimes those can feel really awkward.
Oh, definitely. Mastering the art of conversation, especially small talk or networking, is another key skill.
Yeah, how do you navigate that? There was a helpful framework mentioned, right, about levels of conversation.
Yes, the 3-level framework. It's a good guy. Level 1 is the surface level. General topics, small talk.
Like the weather.
Weather, non-controversial current events,
Yeah.
sports, stuff like that. It's fact-focused. The goal is just to find some common ground, build initial rapport. Usually avoid sensitive topics here. Death, religion, politics, the usual suspect.
Keep it light, level 1, okay.
If you connect there, you might move to level 2. This is about sharing ideas and perspectives, moving beyond just facts.
Getting a bit deeper.
A bit, yeah. You might share opinions, interpretations. This is where relationships start to build. But you still need to be mindful that not all personal experiences fit here. Keep it appropriate for the context.
Right, level 2, ideas and perspectives.
And then level 3 is the most personal, sharing personal experiences, feelings, vulnerabilities. This is usually for closer relationships, friends, family, trusted colleagues. It requires high levels of trust, attention, and really good listening skills.
Level 3, deep connection. So the key is kind of matching the level to the relationship and situation.
Exactly. You don't jump straight to level 3 with someone you just met at a conference. You start at level 1, maybe move to 2 if there's a connection.
And for those networking events specifically, any quick tips?
Yeah, a few practical things. Manage your nerves, take deep breaths, maybe have a goal like meet 3 new people. Prepare a simple, strong introduction. Name, organization, maybe one interesting brief fact about what you do or are interested in.
Your mini elevator pitch?
Kind of. Another great tip is to act like a host even if you're not. Look for people standing alone, introduce people to each other. It takes the focus off your own anxiety.
I like that one. Be the connector.
Yeah. Mingle, don't just stick with people you know. And if you're bad with names, many of us are try using mnemonics or repeat the person's name soon after hearing it.
Good practical tips. Okay, one more area in advanced skills. Difficult conversations or situations.
Ah, yes, the tricky ones. There are a few concepts that can help here. First, understanding precipitating factors. You know how sometimes things just snowball? Someone has a bad commute, then spills coffee, then gets a critical email.
The bad day effect.
Exactly. These negative events pile up and can massively impact someone's mood and how they communicate. Effective communicators try to sense this, recognize it's not necessarily personal, and adjust their approach. It doesn't excuse bad behavior, but understanding the context helps depersonalize it.
See the situation behind the reaction.
Okay.
Second, establishing common ground. We touched on this for networking, but it's even more powerful in difficult situations. Finding any similarity, shared background, hobby, even just a shared goal for the conversation can build rapport and make communication smoother.
Find that point of connection. What if it feels impossible, like you have nothing in common?
That's a great question. Sometimes you have to actively create common ground. Maybe the common ground is simply the shared problem you're trying to solve together, or a shared desire for a positive outcome. Focus on the future goal you can build together.
Create it through shared purpose. Okay, and the last one, iMessages.
Yes, using iMessages. This is a classic technique for giving constructive feedback without putting the other person on the defensive. Instead of you messages, which sound like blaming.
Exactly. You always interrupt me. It sounds like an attack. An iMessage focuses on your experience of the behavior.
How does it work? What's the structure?
Usually 3 parts. First, give an objective, non-judgmental description of the specific behavior.
Just the facts.
Just the facts. Second, state the concrete effect that behavior has on you.
The impact.
The impact. And third, state the feeling it creates in you.
Behavior, effect, feeling. Okay. Could you give an example?
Sure. Instead of you mumble all the time, which is a you statement and a generalization.
Right.
You could say, sometimes when you speak in a very low voice behavior, I often have difficulty hearing everything you say. Effect. It makes me feel a bit frustrated because I want to catch it all. Feeling.
Okay. Behavior, low voice. Effect, difficulty hearing. Feeling, frustrated. That sounds much less accusatory.
It really does. The key is sticking to specifics, avoiding always or never, and owning your feeling without blaming them for making you feel that way. It opens the door for problem solving instead of defensiveness.
Behavior, effect, feeling.
Yeah.
Got it. That takes practice, I imagine.
Definitely takes practice, but it's a powerful tool for navigating conflict constructively.
Okay, let's pivot now and bring all this amazing insight into a really critical, practical application. The project communication plan.
Yes, this is where the rubber meets the road in many professional settings.
It was described as the blueprint to success, and I totally buy that. We hear it all the time, right? Most projects fail because of poor communication.
It's consistently cited as a top reason for project failure. Having a plan up front can save so many headaches and heartaches later.
So what is it exactly, a project communication plan?
Essentially, it's a formal document. It outlines all the different types of communication that will happen during a project. And crucially, it specifies who needs what information, which stakeholders get which communications.
Stakeholders like the
Yeah.
core team, executives, end users.
Exactly, all of those potentially. Team members, senior management, clients, vendors, end users, anyone impacted by or involved in the project.
Okay, so it maps out the whole communication landscape for the project. What goes into this plan? What are the key sections?
Good question. A solid plan usually covers several key areas. First, the communication method.
Like email, meetings, reports.
Precisely. What type of communication are we talking about? Is it a SharePoint site for documentation, Microsoft Teams for quick chats, formal status reports, regular core team meetings, a detailed work breakdown structure or action plan? You list the methods.
And different stakeholders might use different methods, right?
Absolutely. The team might live in Teams and the WBS, while executives just want a monthly summary report via email.
Okay, method. What else?
Next, the communication purpose. Why are we sending this specific communication? What's its goal? Is it for information sharing, decision-making, status updates, accountability?
Behind it. Got it.
Then, content creation. Who is actually responsible for putting the message together? Who writes the report or updates the SharePoint site?
Responsibility for creation.
Followed by content confirmation. Who needs to review and approve the information before it goes out? Who checks it for accuracy and makes sure it's okay to send?
The quality check step. Makes sense.
Then, content distribution and recipients. Who physically sends the communication and critically who receives it? Again, not everyone needs everything. Tailor the distribution list.
Sending and receiving. Targeted delivery.
Exactly. And finally, there's often an additional comment section. This might cover things like required attachments, who should be CC'd, or even how you'll check for understanding.
Checking understanding. Like, assuming if no one objects to the ways of working document, they agree, or explicitly asking for confirmation.
Both could be strategies, yeah. You might detail that in the comments. For example, the plan might specify that the core team uses a color-coded Excel WBS for daily task updates, and checking the sheet counts as communication received.
Okay, that's really comprehensive. Method, purpose, creation, confirmation, distribution recipients, and comments.
It covers all the bases to make sure communication flows smoothly and intentionally throughout the project lifecycle.
So you build this plan, then what? How do you make sure people actually use it?
Great point. The plan isn't useful if it just sits on a shelf. You implement it. Best practice is to include it as part of the official project charter.
Integrate it right from the start.
Yes. And then you present the communication plan clearly during the project kickoff meeting.
So everyone knows the rules of engagement from day one.
Exactly. It sets expectations, clarifies roles, prevents confusion, and avoids assumptions later on. It sets a really positive, organized tone right from the beginning.
So what does this all mean when you put it all together?
It means communication isn't just a soft skill. It's the absolute heartbeat of a successful project. It's the plumbing that ensures information flows where it needs to, preventing costly mistakes and ensuring goals actually get delivered. No assumptions, just clear pathways.
The heartbeat of the project.
Yeah.
I like that. Wow, we have covered a ton of ground today.
Hmm.
From those core principles being audience-centric, goal-driven, structured, engaging, having presence, to the dynamics of delivery, verbal, paraverbal, nonverbal,
Right.
navigating barriers, listening actively, asking powerful questions.
Yeah, the STAR method, probing questions.
And those advanced strategies like appreciative inquiry and handling difficult conversations with iMessages.
AI, common ground.
And finally, tying it all together with the practical blueprint of a project communication plan.
It's been a comprehensive dive.
It really has. Hopefully you listening have gained a really rich understanding of how communication works across so many different situations. We definitely encourage you to take these strategies and start applying them, whether it's just in a casual chat later today or in that critical project meeting tomorrow.
Absolutely. Put them into practice. And maybe as a final thought to mull over, consider this quote, attributed to Nitin Nohria, former dean of Harvard Business School. Communication is the real work of leadership.
Communication is the real work of leadership.
If that's true, then every single interaction you have, every email you write, every meeting you lead, it's an opportunity. An opportunity to lead, to influence, to connect more deeply. So the question to ponder is, how might thinking about communication as leadership in action actually change your approach, starting today?
Thanks for tuning in to episode 2 of FlowUps. When communication aligns, teams thrive, systems stabilize, and ideas gain momentum. Don't forget to subscribe for more operational insight, and we'll see you next time, where movement becomes strategy.